Hello, beautiful people. My name is Kristen. Today, I want to do an exclusive video for just one book, which I don't do that often, but I really feel like this one deserves it. I'm not sure if I should call this like intimidating books or listed books that you have forgotten about, but James Michener's Alaska is probably vying, if not in position, for my favorite book that I have read so far in 2024. This book originally was published in 2015, so almost 10 years ago. So it's not on anybody's radar that I know of. When I looked on Goodreads, because when I finished this book, I was so in its spell, so moved, just so appreciative of its goodness. And when I looked on Goodreads for James Michener, thinking that this would be his most beloved book, out of all of his books, because he's a very, prolific writer, this is number 6, y'all. And I have not read any of the 5 before. The only other one I've read by him is Texas, which I enjoyed very much, but I did not enjoy it near as much as I did this one. So if you're willing to be here and watch this review and you want to know kind of what its flavor and if it's for you, if you have any interest in watching like The Deadliest Catch or Mount Everest climbing, people are going to die, survival kind of stories, this is very much that feel. It actually is intimidating that it's 1,100 pages. If it's on audio, it's 58 hours. But it is worth it. This was so worth it. It was so gripping. I did not want to stop listening and reading it and going on this adventure. It does cover very much in depth from the very creation of the land and some plate tectonic instructions and movements and world creation. And he actually, in a very non-cheesy kind of way, even has you go into the mind of some of the creatures about what they're observing, and you follow along, for instance, a woolly mammoth and their natural instincts and how they would get from point A to point B. And then you will switch, you will have them being hunted by a tribe, and then all of a sudden you'll switch and you'll be in the mind and witnessing the story from the human's perspective. And you will go along and you will learn about the geography, you will learn about the natural resources, you will learn about the history. It is filled with historical fiction that gives an account of a lot of very famous historical events, earthquakes, volcanoes, natural disasters, tsunamis, just a lot of the issues that happened, how it came to statehood, how they didn't even want to be a state at some point, how the World War, there was actually fighting on Alaska soil, but we didn't know it because it wasn't considered America. What? There was all these kind of grand stories where I can't even tell you how odd it was and how I would chuckle at myself because I'm so emotionally wrapped up in the life of a salmon, y'all. I am rooting and nervous for this salmon that he is. And then we get the perspective of the bear on the shore. We get the perspective of the human who's running a salmon cannery. We have decades of families and characters that cross paths and come across one another as teachers, as gold miners. We have so much absolute drama there. It's heart-wrenching, it's gripping. I'm laughing out loud. I cried during this book. I was choked up several times. I just found it so powerful. And yet, my only complaint, honestly, what I'm about to say, if I wasn't saying this would, I could just go ahead and say this is my favorite book of 2024. For 1,100 pages and for as in depth as it went into the hunting, the tourism, the natural resources, the native Alaskan who were there as long as we can remember, the wildlife, all these things. Anytime oil specifically was mentioned or talked about, it was very glossed over. And I lived in Alaska for 3 years, and it was always a given thing that with the exception of a very small percentage who maybe this was their native land, the vast majority are there because of tourism, military, and oil. And this book covers tourism really well, really, really well. It covers military really well, with the exception of it goes through 2015 and doesn't kind of give a fullness of the update of what's going on now. That was not the important thing. But it gives a good account of the military strategy and why Alaska is important in the grand scheme of things. And it went into a lot of detail, including some historical accounts of what was going on in Alaska during World War II. And almost nothing about oil. So for such a large story of Alaska, to leave that out, it would just mention, hey, there happens to be this pipeline that runs across the entire state, when really the regulations and the building of the pipeline were huge. So I wanted to know more about that. So it's too bad that he's passed on now and can't do a sequel or whatever. I suspect it was a political reason that he didn't want to include that. But that's too bad, because he could have just stated the facts of it, and I think it tells its own story. Like he's not heavy-handed about his political views. He simply tells the story and leaves it hanging. So I know exactly who he was even before I Google searched him and said, yep, I'm right in all my theories, right? But he was not heavy-handed about it. He didn't tell you what to think. He just simply told you the stories and the facts, and you went, oh, And I think that is beautiful. The descriptions in here, the pictures that are painted of such a beautiful land, of such a beautiful state, the way you are invested in the lives of these people as they are struggling for statehood, struggling for education, struggling just to survive the rough elements, trying to get freedom from persecution, using this as a land to exile people to. What does that mean? What does that do to the people that are already there? Really, really fascinating read, fascinating account. If you have any interest in any of that, even if you do not have direct interest in Alaska, the state, which it's really a beautiful, very interesting state. But even then, if you're just along the lines of survival, going against the elements, lots of man versus nature, or the drama of pioneering and frontiering and those kind of adventure stories, this is your book. And you're going to learn a lot because it's very well researched. And I would stop and Google search, and these things happened and were accurate, and now I know about them. So there it is, James Michener's Alaska. I did splurge and actually buy the audio and predominantly listen to it, although every once in a while I would read along with it. But very gripping, 5 stars. Can't recommend this enough. If you've read any other James Michener, I think his most popular one is Centennial, so I will definitely be checking that one out probably next, as well as a couple of people have recommended The Source. But if you have other popular, or not even popular, the ones that you love, if you have ones of James Michener that you love, particularly drop me a comment below. Put this on your radar. Check it out. See if you just, and I will say it has 12 sections. The first section is that plate tectonic developing one. If that doesn't interest you, that was probably my least favorite section. And it is, all sections are a little bit long, but that one's the shortest. So don't stop with that one. Like, don't DNF it if that doesn't totally float your boat. Read at least one more. And then every single time I'd get to the end of the section, I'd think, oh, that was so good. That could have been like a conclusion, wrap up of this book. I don't know how it's going to get any better or how it's going to hold interest, or it continues. It's amazing. So highly recommend it. Look forward to discussing it with you. If you've read it and you want to share something about it spoilery, just be sure to list spoiler for people who are reading the comments so they don't fall into it on accident. But I look forward to seeing y'all in the comments. Hope you're having great reading, and take care.